Well, if you know that the venture capitalist wants 10 times their money and you deceive them into thinking that you're that type of person and that you secretly just want to have an easy life, well then fuck you. You're the scam artist that give entrepreneurs a bad name.
One of the best books that I've ever read on building businesses is called 24 Assets. And my guest today is the author of this legendary book, and his name is Daniel Priestley. Daniel is a powerhouse of building businesses. He has built multiple $10 million plus businesses. He also writes a lot of business books, 24 Assets being my favorite. And he has also written a book called Key Person of Influence, which is a must read for anybody who's looking to build his personal brand in 2024 onward.
The best kind of money is when it happens a little bit slow. You don't want it to happen fast.
It happened very fast for you. So how did that change you?
I boom busted twice. I went millionaire back to zero twice before I was 30. When someone buys your business, there's three big things that they want. Number one, they want a proprietary asset. The second thing is an operational team that's not going to leave when they acquire you. And then they want...
How do you hire great talent?
The trick is that you need to have a personal brand where talent want to work with you. A key person of influence is someone who it's very easy to get to know, like, and trust them. So the only way you're going to get an investor is because an investor knows you, likes you, trusts you. The only reason you're going to get a customer is because a customer knows you, likes you, trusts you. Customers and investors don't trust brands, especially brand new brands. They trust people. So basically, the more you've got a personal brand, essentially...
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
We're live. I'm very well.
Yeah, we're live just like that. So thank you for the time again. I'm very privileged enough to have you on the podcast here. Yeah, every single time I have anybody on the podcast, I ask them one specific question, and that is the context of their life. So who is Daniel Priestley, and what's the context, the earliest context you have of your life? And how did you end up here?
Just a surface level question, a basic question to begin with. What's the context of your life?
Yeah.
How do you want me to answer that? Do you want me to give you the facts, or do you want me to go philosophical? What information would you like? I'll start with the basics. I grew up in Australia. So really lucky to be born in Australia at a great time in history, good school, provided by the government, all that sort of stuff, like lots of safety and all of those facilities. My mum's a journalist. My dad is a school teacher while I'm growing up. And when I'm 10 years old, I get home from karate and I discover that mum has accidentally set the curtains on fire and the whole house is filled up with smoke, right? And the fire brigade had come and they put it out, and there was all this burnt mark around the kitchen. And what happened is that all of the stuff in the house got damaged by smoke. And I, as a 10-year-old, think to myself, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to clean this stuff and I'm going to sell it. I'm going to make some money, right? So I start cleaning it up and I do all this, and then I decide I'm going to have a garage sale. I'm going to put up a poster, and I put this garage sale together. I put all the things out on the night. And then the day before the sale, I go around to all the neighbors and I ask if they want to put anything in my sale as well. And I do 50-50 joint venture with the neighbors. And then everyone arrives. And basically, I'm selling all this stuff. Mum and dad are in the house. I'm out there making my sales. This guy comes up and he says to me, how much for the microwave? And I say, it's $30 or $25. And he says, it's too expensive. Can I talk to your dad? I go, oh, okay. So I've done something wrong. So I go in and I get dad. Dad comes out. He says, what's the problem? And he says, well, your son says that the microwave is $25, but can I pay $15? And my dad just looks at him and says, it's his business, so you'll have to negotiate with him. And he walks back inside the house.
Wow.
So I think to myself, wow, it's my business. I've got a business. So I hear this word business. And I think to myself, that's really cool. So I tell the guy, no, it's $25. So anyway, at the end of the day, I make $300, and it's enough to buy a bike and a Sega Master System and a game. And I am absolutely thrilled. And I get it in my head, wow, this is it. I just need to start businesses. I've got a business now. So I think to myself, okay, this is cool. So over the course of my teenage years, I become obsessed with entrepreneurship and business. I start reading business books when I'm a teenager. I start studying like entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship. And yeah, so that's the context. The context is when most kids were like excited about, sports, I'm super pumped about entrepreneurship as a teenager.
So do you think entrepreneurs are born or like not made, that kind of a thing?
I honestly think that entrepreneurship is a team sport and that there's different places on the team. Some people are like a really good COO. They're really operational. Some people are really good CTO. Some people are natural salespeople. And I think that anyone can play on the team. And obviously, there are some people who are very well suited to that very first setting up with a blank page, coming up with an idea. But that doesn't make a lot of money. Like, that's not a big money maker. What makes the money is scaling successfully, and scaling successfully is a team effort. And everyone can be part of, a successful team that scales.
You mentioned one thing, which is, I think I read that somewhere. You wrote an article or something like that. All the money in the world is in scaling businesses, not in growing businesses, not in starting businesses. What's a good scale looks like to you? Like, how do you actually scale a business? And what's the point where you think like, oh yeah, okay, that business has scaled, successfully to that point? Like, what are those metrics? How do you define that?
So what I'm looking for with the entrepreneurial, the super entrepreneurial phase of a business is normally from 0 to about 40 people. And this is where you come up with an idea and you come up with a product, you get product market fit, you go to market, all of these kind of initial stages, and then you hit about 40 people. When you hit about 40 people, that's where you can access more funding. That's where you can get some grown-ups to come in and help run the business. That's where you can afford some technology. That's where you can afford to kind of up the ad budget and all of that sort of stuff. So when I think about that entrepreneurial phase, of course, there's entrepreneurial vibes required all the way through. But to me, I think of the first 30 to 40 people as that hyper entrepreneurial phase. 2 people becomes 4, 4 becomes 8, and then 8, turns into a 30-person business. It's actually very similar to the army, the military. If they send 2 people away, they call it a scout team, then 4 people is a fire team, 8 person is a section, and 30 people is a platoon. So I think that first journey is the 0 to 30 people journey.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I want to start us off with starting a business, and then just want to take it from like starting a business to running a business, then growing a business, and then eventually exiting a business, like the traditional.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
And the reason why I want to start with starting a business is because all of the content that you produce, on Dent, on different podcasts, on the channel, you talk about how to build a good business, how to start a good business, like all of that kind of stuff. So very naive question at the beginning is why everyone should start a business, and what happens if like everybody on this world is an entrepreneur?
Well, I don't think everyone should start a business. As I said, there's a lot of money in growing and scaling a business. A lot of money gets created between 2 million of revenue and 20 million of revenue, and most of the people on the team didn't start the business. There's a lot of money that gets made between 20 million and 200 million, and almost all of the people didn't start a business. So I don't necessarily think everyone should start a business. I do think that smart, talented people who are working in a large corporation that treats them like a replaceable part should go and work in an entrepreneurial business. So I really think that if you work in a large corporate and they treat you like, a piece of machinery, you go and quit and go and start working with a business that's got 15, 20 people, you're going to have way more fun. And if you can negotiate some equity or you can negotiate some options, you're going to make a bunch of money and you're going to have way more fun. So I just think that there's more money to be made in the entrepreneurial journey, but I don't necessarily think everyone has to start a business. So that's point number one. But I think that there's plenty of opportunity to get paid great money, and there's plenty of opportunity to, earn shares and all of that sort of stuff, and to learn much, much faster. The truth about large corporates is that they want to standardize all the people and all the parts. They want people to fit into divisional roles. They can't pay people what they're worth because they have to pay people an average of what they're worth. Let's say you have doctors in the UK. So here in the UK, the doctors are going on strike because they say it's not fair. We want to get paid more money. We don't get paid very well compared to the rest of the world. The problem with the government is the government can't pay one doctor who's amazing more than another doctor who's average because they set a new standard that everyone wants. And it's the same in large corporates. If they start paying some people 180,000 and other people who do the same sort of job get 80,000, then everyone's going to want to get the big pay rise. So they have to pay people just an average of what they're worth, and they basically have to pay people, some people are not worth 80 grand, but they get paid 80 grand. Some people, are worth 120 grand, but they're getting paid 80 grand. But you all get paid an average, and you all just do an average job, and you all just get stuck in a corner doing the same thing day in, day out, and it's dehumanizing. That's not going to happen in a small company. A small company is going to recognize talent, and they're going to say, we can't afford to pay you more money, but we can give you equity. If you hit these targets, you can unlock these bonuses. So you got way more opportunity to play.
That's a good thought. How many businesses do you run today? I think 8.
8.
8. Okay. Okay, just 8.
Well, I don't run them. So if you think about who runs a business, it's normally a general manager or an operator type personality. I'm the CEO of a group of 8 companies. So I don't do much operational stuff.
In terms of time, how do you allocate your time to 8 different companies, and then that's like 8 different problems and 8 different type of people you're working with? So how do you allocate your time across the board?
So we have a senior leadership team of 5 people at the top of the group of companies. So we have a chief marketing officer who's managing the marketing and revenue generation. We have a chief operations officer who's managing the smooth operations. We have a chief finance officer who is managing the money. And we have a chief technology officer who manages our tech. So think about it like this. If you were to take Microsoft or Google or Apple, those businesses have hundreds of thousands of employees, and they are businesses within businesses. So if you just go down to the Apple store, that is a business within a bigger business, right? That Apple store runs its own P&L, and they run their, and if they have a problem, they're not going to go and talk to Tim Cook about the problem. They're going to go and, talk to the person who, or they'll probably solve it internally, right? Most problems they can solve themselves. So there's going to be a store manager for that particular store, and that store runs its own business. So, the App Store is a business, and AirPods are a business. So there are people who run those businesses within a bigger business, and they make sure that product and that experience lives up to the brand. And then the CEO of the company is looking at what's the future, what's the vision, are we attracting top talent? So my job as the group leader is to promote what we do, to hire great talent, to unlock resources and find capital if we need it, to challenge and to inspire and to align, get everyone into alignment. So essentially, my job is to make sure that the team is in alignment and has all the resources that they need. If you've got your operator hat on, it's like, how would you manage all those businesses?
Wow. Okay. How do you hire great talent? Because you mentioned that's the first thing that comes to your mind when you're mentioning you're a CEO. So how do you do that?
The trick is that you need to have a personal brand where talent want to work with you. So like, for example, let's use an extreme example. David Beckham, the footballer, a lot of footballers would love the opportunity to work in and around anywhere that he's working because they look up to him and they say, wow, it'd be really great to work with David Beckham. Steve Jobs, people would put up with all sorts of demands to work with Steve Jobs. Elon Musk today, people know if you work with Elon Musk, you know that he's going to be demanding and unreasonable and it's going to be a hard job, but you're working with Elon Musk. So the key is that you have to have a CEO brand where talented people want to continue working with you and that they feel that that's their best opportunity and that's a great place for them to work and it's a great place for them to excel and do well and that they're learning and they're developing and they're earning. And that if they're around you, they're going to earn more, learn more, have more fun, all of those sorts of things. So you got to basically do that. And then you've got to wait and have a bit of time in the game so that great people show up and they stick around, and then you collect them over time. So you might have 1 or 2 talented people that you work with, and then you might discover, oh, I've just made a new talent acquisition. So you're building your team of amazing people, and you're holding on to them and keeping them around you. And you've got to keep evolving yourself so that your team want to keep playing the game with you.
Yeah, that's the best definition anybody has ever given me, because every single time I ask somebody, how do you hire great talent? And it starts with, you need to recognize the need, recognize the person's need, recognize the personality types, this and that. But yeah.
No, that's pointless. That's pointless because let's say I discover that there's an amazing person who fits my perfect need and they work at Microsoft. Well, they're not going to quit they're not going to quit their job and work with some random startup. You have to be the one who they go, wow, I would love the opportunity to work with you, right? So they have to go home to their spouse and say, you will not believe I've just been offered a job to go and work with XYZ. And they go, oh, I've heard of that guy. Yeah, that's cool, right? Or they go and Google the name and they're like, oh, wow, this guy's really up to something. He's got a big vision. He or she's got a big vision. This person seems to really understand products and they're fun and they've got a big purpose. Wow, that's cool. I'm excited for you. So it doesn't matter how you can identify the need as much as you like, but if you're not the type of person who people want to work with.
So you started 8 companies. Tell me a little bit about...
I didn't start 8 companies. I've bought a number of companies.
Oh, you bought a number of companies. Okay.
Yeah. So at least half the companies in the group have been acquired. I also buy companies that are up and running.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's an interesting one. So a lot of the time what we do is we have VCs on the podcast. So we talk about these things like acquisitions and post-liquidity event or something like that. I want to ask you one specific question about acquisition from your past, and then I'm going to ask you what exactly happens in the acquisition. So I was doing some research on your background and then stumbled across this thing that you had a $14 million acquisition offer back in the day in Australia, and that somehow eventually blew up, and you moved to the UK. So tell us that story. And following up, I'll ask you, anybody who's listening to the podcast, but first-time founders looking for exits, what should they do, what should they not do, and that kind of stuff.
All right, so let me tell you that story. When I was in my early 20s, I started a performance marketing agency. We took on a client and we blew their business through the roof. They went from earning less than $1 million a year to $1 million a month, and we were driving the whole thing, and we were taking the risk, and we were in partnership with this company, and we were sky high, right? So everyone was making tons of money and having work hard, play hard, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne every single month. So we were flying up and down the East Coast. The results were so spectacular that this company we're in partnership with, they decided they were going to float on the stock market, and they started the process of getting ready to list. I went to the CEO and I said, look, in order for you to be able to get this listing, you're going to need to be able to secure your marketing channel. We are your marketing channel. We're your performance marketing business. Your intention is to float for 200 million. We want 7% of that. What we want to do is we want to have 7% of the funds raised. So we want proportional capital and shares based on 7% of the business. So it was a 14 million heads of terms. So that was a negotiation, and he immediately agreed, right? I was actually wanting 5%, but I went in with 7% so that he had room to negotiate down.
Yeah.
And he went, yep, 7%, let's do it. And we did heads of terms. And then they asked me to fly over to Perth, which is a 6.5-hour flight. And I took the red-eye flight, so I flew all night. I didn't sleep. I was with a friend. We went over to Perth. They then left us sitting in a boardroom foyer for about 7 hours before they opened up the door to have a conversation with us. And at this point, we were just so angry that they would ask us to fly over there and sit around for 7 hours that we picked a fight with them. We had a massive tantrum, and we said, we're not going to work with you, and, all of this sort of stuff, right? So we threw a massive tantrum, and basically we had a fight and walked out. And then they responded by sending us legal letter and trying to sue us for $1 million and blah, 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 blah. And anyway, rather than sorting it out, we just ended up having this massive fight, and the whole partnership blew up and broke down. So, and look, there are other deeper reasons for that. There was some awarenesses that I thought that they were not a sustainable business. We were growing too fast. They weren't looking after people well enough. there were some fundamental reasons I was also extremely worried about doing the deal and having my name attached to it. So I had nervous concerns. They weren't addressing those concerns. Anyway, without going into the detail, I had a $14 million offer on the table. They did actually float. They could have paid the money. We would have got the thing. They over the next 2 years, their stock went from a couple of dollars down to like 2 or 20 cents or 10 cents. So all the issues that I knew that they had, which mind you, I could have fixed. If they had have brought me in properly, I would have been able to fix those issues.
What were those issues, if you don't mind sharing with us?
Well, they did terrible staff training and terrible, there were so many people working in the company who didn't know what they were doing. They were bringing on anyone and everyone. The CEO was pretty loose, and he enjoyed partying a lot. And he would turn up to key meetings having been out all night the night before. And he was an embellisher. When he would sell, he would always be embellishing the truth. He would, if we were about to do something, he would always say it was done and it was finished. And if something was a few months away, he would say, yeah, we've just done this. So you never quite knew what was real and what was made up. And I thought, in a publicly listed company, that's not going to be acceptable. So there was all sorts of issues like that. So anyway, the deal fell apart. But look, if I had have had better coaching and better guidance at the time, I definitely could have pulled off that $14 million exit. And I could have probably got all the cash just after the float and could have sold the shares 6 months later while it was still buoyant. There was definitely a better way to handle the situation. Let's talk about just exits in general, because I've since had exits that have gone well. But look, so there's 3 things that you want to get right when you exit a business. When someone buys your business, there's 3 big things that they want. Number 1, they want a proprietary asset. They want to have some sort of an asset that is a unique asset. It could be the brand, it could be the system, the technology, it could be the database, it could be the content, it could be the nature of the product. It could be the position in the marketplace, but there's some sort of proprietary asset that they've identified that this business has an asset. You're not just a brokerage model business. You're not just selling time for money. You have something that is a permanent asset that is separate from the people. If all the people disappeared, there would be something of great value just sitting there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I call that the proprietary asset. The second thing that they're looking for is an operational team that's not going to leave when they acquire you. And normally, the minimum viable team size that a proper acquirer wants is 30 people up to 150 people is a really good size. 30 to 150 people is a nice size for an acquisition. In the entrepreneurship space, obviously, big companies merge all the time, multi-billion-dollar mergers. I'm talking about in the world of entrepreneurship. So 30 to 150 people is a really good team. If you're doing something really, really, really niche, maybe it's a 10 person team, but most of the time, 30 to 150 people is where the sweet spot is. And then they want easy to forecast revenues, right? They want a really simple revenue model. And what you're looking at is the CFO has to be able to get a spreadsheet and just drag it out into the future and say, yep, okay, month 24, month 48, month 60. They just drag that spreadsheet out. And they go, oh, okay, so this business is pretty simple. Everyone pays $50 a month subscription, and there's currently 6,000 people paying. And if we just pull these levers, it goes up to 60,000 subscribers. And if we open up the US market, open up the Canadian market, open up the Australian, New Zealand market, okay, well, then we can easily get to those numbers. So you need the CFO to go, oh, that's an easy recurring revenue model business. I can understand the revenues. If you sell things like packages, or if you sell things like, that have to be quoted one by one and it's not quite sure how much they sell for, all of that's going to reduce the exit. The more simple it is for a CFO to just model it forward, the more you're going to sell the business. So essentially, when you build a business, you should be saying, I want to get the team to 30 to 150 people. I want to develop a proprietary asset that's hard to copy. And I want to have a simple recurring revenue model that a CFO can easily put on a spreadsheet and understand. Those are the big 3 things that you're going to get an exit for.
Okay, so 2 thoughts on that. So thought number 1 is, can every business be bought? Can every business have an exit? That is thing number 1. And thing number 2 is, every single time, any entrepreneur building a business, is the goal or should the goal be an exit?
Well, let's start with question number one. Every business can be sold. The question is how much and what are the terms. Let's say you've got a personal training business and it's one person who delivers personal training.
Okay.
Right? That's the smallest type of business you can imagine, right?
But how would you, and while you're answering that, please also tell us, like, how would you develop proprietary assets around that? Like one-person business, proprietary assets.
Yeah, it could, well, let's zoom right down. It could be an Instagram account that has 10,500 people on it. And it could be that they've all filled in an online fitness assessment and that there's a deal in place with a local supplement company that pays recurring revenue based on introductions. So there are a few little things. Now, but mind you, I might say, well, because that business is so heavily dependent on one person, I value the business at £5,000 and I'm going to pay $1,000 a month for 5 months as you hand over the clients to me, the new personal trainer. So look, every business can be sold, but it's for how much and what are the terms are you going to get? So what I'm discussing is the idea that if you want a life-changing amount of money and you want as much of that cash up front, you got to have those big three.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. But yes, every business can be sold depending on how much and depending what the terms are. And the beautiful thing about dealing in the entrepreneur space is there's a lot of flexibility. You can't go up to somebody and buy their house and say, I'll pay you off over the next 18 months. That doesn't happen. But you can go up to a business and say, we'll take on this business today and we'll pay it down over the next 18 months. So you can actually do acquisitions where there's almost no money up front. There's huge degrees of flexibility. There's vendor financing. There's all sorts of flexibility you've got in the M&A process. So that's the answer. Number one is yes, but you're shooting for something big. Now, should every business go for an exit? If you build a business that can be sold, it's less likely that you want to sell it, right? So it's kind of like if you imagine living in a house that lots of people would want to buy, it's probably a nice house.
Yeah.
If you are in a business that a lot of people would want to buy, it's probably a good business. It has a good brand and it has recurring revenues and it has an amazing team who know what they're doing. And you've built, some moats in the business and it's a fairly safe business and it's been tested through some good times and bad times and it worked through good times and bad times. So the reason that business is now saleable is because it's a desirable business. If you build a business towards an exit, if you do it correctly, you should actually feel like, I don't want to sell this business. I'll tell you the strangest thing.
Okay.
I've had a number of businesses where on day one, we actually say, we want to sell this business for, 50 million, 100 million, whatever the number is, right? And we say, that's what we're shooting for. So we design it and we build it. And the funniest thing is the closer and closer you get to the number, everyone who's on the senior team says, I don't want to sell it.
Okay.
We shouldn't sell it. It's a great business. We don't want to sell it for 50 million because it's going to be worth 200 million. We don't want to sell it for 100 million. It's going to be worth 400 million. So the reason someone's going to buy it is they feel the same way. They're sitting there going, oh, this is great. The person who buys the business feels like they're buying it cheap. Even if they pay 100 million, they're buying it because they think it's worth 400 million soon. So the funniest thing is that when you sell a company, you're going to be slightly disappointed because you're going to know that business has a really clear plan to go 4, 5, 6, 7 times bigger than it currently is. And you're like, oh, you're going to feel like, did we leave money on the table? Very rarely do you get an idiot who comes in and pays full price and it's like crazy amounts of money. It's often Americans who do that, by the way. It doesn't happen outside of America.
Why do you think so?
There's too much money kicking around in the US.
Absolutely, yes.
It very rarely happens outside of America. Here's a hot tip for any founders who are thinking about selling their company. Sell it to Americans. Don't sell a company to anyone outside of America.
I had Dan, his name is Dan as well. So he runs a $100 million fund in the UK. So he was on the podcast and I was asking him the same thing, like why we have these overly valued startups and, the funding that's been happening over the last couple of years. And he was like, because you guys have too much money. You guys just
well, actually, I'll give you a better answer.
Okay.
The real answer is that the USA is not a country, it's a platform. So if you think about the USA as a platform, it's a growth platform. When you're inside the USA, you have 350 million people to sell to. They're all fairly, they've got access to credit cards and they've got a level of affluence. You've got an entire ecosystem of funding, mergers and acquisitions, talent, all of that. So if you think about USA as a platform, the best exit is for someone who doesn't have access to that platform to sell to someone who does have access to that platform. So the perfect scenario is that if I'm here in the UK, I build a business and I build it up to 50 to 100 million, but I don't have access to the US platform the way a US company does. Now, if I sell to a US company, they've got access to the platform called USA, and then they can access all the talent, all the distribution networks, all the funding, all the stuff that is designed for scale. America is built to scale companies, right? 50 states. If you can build a $2 million business in 50 states, bang, you've got $100 million worth of revenue just by making $2 million worth of sales in each state. So the USA is a growth platform. Outside of the USA, we have much more innovation because we have to be more innovative because we've got to do more bootstrapping. We've got to be smarter because we don't have the fire hose of money that the USA has. But the USA, the smartest move is that the USA finds companies outside of the USA that have rigorously been tested in smaller markets, buys those companies for 100 million, brings them into the USA, scales them up to $1 billion.
Wow, that's a good one. Tell me something else. You started your first business when you was 21, almost 2 decades ago or something like that, right? So 2 questions. So if you were to start the same business today, how differently would you do that? Second question that I have is, how can anybody start a business today? And the reason why I'm asking you is because I read something that people price things too cheaply, and you just went on like for the whole thing with Chris Dow, like, okay, so this is why people don't build successful businesses and all that. So how would you have done differently? And how can anybody start a business today and scale it up pretty quickly?
The first thing is that you want to decide, do you want a lifestyle or a performance business? A lifestyle business, you're going to keep it deliberately small. Ideally, you're going to keep it between 4 and 12 employees or 4 and 12 people on a team. And you're going to do a few million of revenue and 6 figures of profit after everyone gets paid, including yourself. And the goal of that business is to just have fun. And it's not designed to scale and exit. It's designed to just be fun, freedom, and flexibility. So a friend of mine called Ali Abdal, he's a YouTuber. He's got a team of 10 people. They make $5 million a year worth of sales. With 10 people, it makes $2.5–3 million worth of profit. But he's not trying to build to exit. He just enjoys being a YouTuber and he loves making millions a year. And he has no intention to build that and sell that, right? So it's a lifestyle business. So the first thing is, do you want a lifestyle business or do you want a performance business, which is you're going to build to a 30 to 150 person team. You're going to get 10 million of revenue, 7 figures of profit. You're building a proprietary asset and you're building for exit. So you got to make that decision first. My first business was a brokerage model business where I was essentially doing the marketing for other people's businesses. And the stupid thing is that doesn't acquire very much value, right? It doesn't attract, the value is built into somebody else's business. The only reason I had a $14 million offer is because we were integral to them being able to keep their numbers if they went public, but they were the ones who had all the proprietary assets that we were selling and building. So they captured the value. We were just generating the revenue by being a broker. So if you imagine a business that is a car sales business, a car yard business, the cars are valuable, but being a car salesperson is not valuable. You can't sell that, right? If you're a real estate salesperson, you're selling a valuable asset called real estate, but you have to, it's not yours. You're brokering someone else's value. So I would not start a brokerage model business if I want to exit, if I want to have a performance business. A brokerage model business is a great place to start if you want to learn, because you're actually leveraging a proven asset to make money. So it's not a bad place to start. Today is the greatest time in history to be an entrepreneur. There's no better time. We now have huge amounts of technology that's for free or almost for free. We have huge access to markets, that are just global markets. You can access talent no matter where they are in the world. It wasn't that long ago that if you wanted a developer, if you're inside the USA, you have to have developers on $200,000 a year. Whereas if you go to Pakistan, $2,000 a month gets you a pretty damn good developer. $2,000 a month is the same as $20,000 a month in the US. So, you've got access to developers, you've got access to designers, front-end developers and designers. There are people in in war-torn Ukraine looking for jobs right now, so they don't have to go fight on the front line. And they're phenomenally talented people who, up until very recently, were working in amazing agencies and doing incredible work. So we live in a world where, provided everyone's got internet access, you've got a team, you've got a marketplace, you can build a valuable business. You can also sell using these websites for selling a business. There are plenty of people who build a business and sell it for $500,000 to $1 million using acquisition.com or something like that. So it's the most incredible time in history. The only thing is that you have to make good decisions. So you have to learn. Now, it used to be, back when I first started, that you had to buy cassette tape sets and CD sets, and each one cost $500 or $1,000. There were no podcasts. There were no YouTube channels. You didn't have access to the training and development. You had no access. Occasionally an entrepreneur would put out a biography or a book and tell you a little bit about how they did it, but you had to sit down and read a whole book to get that information. Now, podcasts, videos, free resources, free software trials, like it's just so easy now. So, you just got to be smart about it.
Okay, awesome. All right, thank you for sharing all of that. Very funny question that comes to my mind is why agency businesses are not seem sexy enough compared to D2C or SaaS businesses. Why everybody would want to start that business and not the agency business. And the reason why I ask you is because you started, the first one is the agency, and you still have a lot of agencies.
Yeah, the agency businesses don't naturally have proprietary assets, right? So if you can build a successful product business, it's much more saleable, because when we talked about the three things that people buy, one of those things is proprietary asset. Agencies don't naturally have a lot of proprietary assets, not the same way as companies. They have to make it up every time. So every time they take on a new client, they have to invent a new way of doing things and come up with it. Whereas behind me is a Fender Stratocaster guitar. It was created in the 1950s and it's exactly the same today, and they just keep selling that product over and over and over and over again. Anyone who wants an electric guitar thinks about getting a Fender Stratocaster. And it's just a brand, and it's a design, and it hasn't changed since the 1950s. So they don't have to invent Fender Stratocasters. They just have to keep making them, and keep doing it. The thing about business is, as fast as humanly possible, you want to move your team to the demand side of the equation, not the supply side of the equation. All business is a balance between demand and supply. So let's just think about it really, really simple. If there's an ice cream truck in a park and it's a hot sunny day, there is the supply, which is that the ice cream truck has a certain number of ice creams that it can sell, right, before it runs out of ice cream. So that's the supply side. And there's the demand side, which is that it's a hot sunny day and people are out in the park and it's a busy park, and you select a market where people are wanting to have ice creams. So what most product people do is they spend so much time getting their ice cream van ready, and they tinker with the ice cream van, and they say, should it be pink or should it be green? Should it have a big frilly thing that pops out, or should we get rid of that? Should it have, a giant, speaker that does music, or should we not do music? Which kind of brand of wheels should we do, right? And all these decisions about how the ice cream van is going to be. But ultimately, businesses make money because of the demand side, not the supply side. Now, obviously, you've got to have something that people want, so the supply side's important, but it's your ability to develop demand, not supply, that makes all the difference. So the problem with agencies is that you're constantly reinventing the supply side. You're just all the time reinventing supply. So it leaves extremely low amounts of time and resource to be focused on demand generation. Does that make sense?
But how can agencies move the resources toward the supply side and not the demand side? To the demand side, not the supply side. Yeah.
Think about Gary Vaynerchuk. So Gary Vaynerchuk runs, I think VaynerMedia is Gary and his brother, and basically his brother runs the supply side and Gary runs the demand side. And essentially, Gary runs around making sure everyone knows what VaynerMedia is, and he goes and builds the demand side of the equation. And then his brother makes sure that anyone who shows up and wants to spend money gets looked after, and that they run the agency. So what if you look at what does the demand side look like for agency? It looks like Gary Vaynerchuk. It looks like basically speaking in conferences, being on podcasts, building 1 million followers on social media, writing books. All of that is the demand side. You look at anyone who's got a really successful agency, even going back to the 1950s when Ogilvy wrote the book on advertising and marketing, and he wrote a best-selling book called Marketing. That is essentially the demand side, generating massive amounts of demand for the agency. So the only agencies that do really well are the ones that actually have a person whose full-time job is being the key person of influence to generate demand for the agency.
Speaking of key person of influence, I was thinking like when we should start talking about the books, and my favorite is 24 Assets, still have them, I have it here. And that was back in 2021, the first time, so we started a company. So that was part of our onboarding. Anybody who would join the company, who would learn.
Amazing.
So we had that. So this is what I think. I think I saw a graphic or something like that where you just kind of had this 2-axis chart drawn up, like start with key person of influence, and then there's oversubscribed, and at the end there's like 24 assets, right? So it's kind of stuff like that. So how does all these books, like, to me it looks like they define the journey of an entrepreneur, like starts somewhere and then goes big. So what's that journey looks like, and how each book fits in their journey.
First book is Entrepreneur Revolution. And in that book, I'm telling you that the world has changed and that you need to understand that the world of entrepreneurship is where all the action is now. And it tells you the mindset of an entrepreneur and how that's different to a worker. And it tells you how to get started with some challenges. Even before you've got a business, it tells you some things like keeping an entrepreneur journal and getting structured and looking for team members. So all of that's in there. And then it tells you things like how to test your concept, how to find your passion and mix it with your ability to get paid. So it's covering the basics of entering into the entrepreneurial environment. Second book is Key Person of Influence. This is where you establish yourself as the person who's responsible for generating demand. And you're going to be out there speaking about your business and becoming the key person of influence. Third book is Oversubscribed. This is where you now run campaigns and promotions to scale the business. 24 Assets is where you formalize all your assets into an ecosystem of exitable, scalable assets. So you go through that. And then the final one is How to Raise Entrepreneurial Kids, where you meet your partner, have babies, and raise the next generation of entrepreneurs. I'm trying to create my next round of customers by, if I can get the parents to raise the entrepreneurial kids, then they'll buy all the books again.
Absolutely. I think, it comes full circle. On that, key person of influence, I just want to ask you a couple of things on that. So I think, I'll give you some context behind that, like why I'm saying this thing. I happen to talk to a lot of VCs on the podcast, and what we have realized is founders who have built their personal brands good enough, like they're being transparent, being authentic, they share the knowledge and all that, they are twice as likely to raise funds successfully compared to anybody who's never written a post on LinkedIn or been on a podcast or something like that, right? So
I'm surprised it's only twice as.
That's my assumption. Like the numbers is definitely going to be higher. So I don't have any study to back it up. So my question to you is why founders should focus on building their personal brand, and what exactly is a personal brand?
So a key person of influence is not being an influencer. An influencer is like making themselves the product, and they're basically saying, look at me, I'm this cool person. A key person of influence is someone who it's very easy to get to know, like, and trust them. The reason you want to do this is people buy from people. People buy from, the only place you're going to get money is from other people, right? Think about it like that. Where does money come from? It comes from other people. So Dogs don't have money. Robots don't have money. Only people have money. So the only place you're going to get paid is other people. So the only way you're going to get an investor is because an investor knows you, likes you, trusts you. The only reason you're going to get a customer is because a customer knows you, likes you, trusts you. Customers and investors don't trust brands, especially brand new brands. They trust people. So it's people doing business with people. Money can only flow to and from people. So basically, the more you've got a personal brand, essentially, it's like, why does Central Station have so many more is it so much more busy? Because it's connected to all the other stations. So if you become the central station for your industry, everyone knows you, everyone's connected to you, way more opportunities are just going to come and flow. If you set up, a station and it's way in the middle of nowhere and it's only connected to one very distant, station, no one's going to come, and that's not going to be a busy station. It's going to be an empty station. So, having a personal brand is essentially positioning yourself in the action so that lots of people know you, like you, and trust you. There's some research that says that in order for people to get to know you, like you, and trust you, they have to spend 7 hours with you. So, yeah, right, 7 hours. So you got on this call and you said, oh, it's really great to finally meet you because I've read all your books and I've watched your podcast. So in your brain, you've spent 7 hours with me. I haven't yet spent 7 hours with you. So it's funny. Let's theoretically, if I pitched you an opportunity, you'd be open to hear about it because you've spent 7 hours with me. If you pitched me an opportunity, I would need to get to know you better because because I haven't read your books or listened to your podcast just yet, right? So it's always this 7 hour rule, right? There's this 7 hour rule. So the more you build a personal brand, more people have spent 7 hours for you. So here's a silly thing to think about. It's like, how many people in the world have spent 7 hours with you, right? Imagine that there was this counter and it tracked throughout your entire life how many people have spent 7 hours with you. So there's all the people you went to school with, they spent 7 hours with you. There's, your family members, they've spent 7 hours with you. Then there's people you've worked with, in different careers, they've spent 7 hours with you. But then it kind of, like, let's say for most people, there's about 1,500 people who have spent 7 hours with you. Once you build a personal brand, let's say you put some podcast episodes, you write a book, you do some YouTube videos, you put some social media out there. Suddenly that number could go to 15,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 people. Over the course of a few years, now you've got 10 times more people than the average person who knows you, likes you, and trusts you. And when that happens, it just becomes insanely easy to do everything. When I want to launch a company, we get 4,000 subscribers pretty much straight away. So most companies, they work really hard to get their first 4,000 subscribers. We get that in the first campaign, the first couple of emails. When I want to raise money, I'm oversubscribed for people wanting to put money in. I have to make a decision where the cutoff point is. So if I want to raise $500,000, I will always have 1 to 2 million worth of people wanting to invest. And I have to say, I'm so sorry, but we're going to cut off at 500,000 for now. We will come back to you when the next round is open. So I'm in the other position of like, we've got we've got too many people who want to work with us. Right now, I'm launching a tech product. I've got 1,200 people who are disappointed because they didn't make it into the beta group of testers. They wanted to be testers of the product. And now we're getting all these people who are annoyed because they didn't get to be a tester for the product.
Wow. Tell me something else. You got to this point, how many years of efforts? Because, you mentioned one particular thing, and that is like, I'm oversubscribed for people who would want to invest in my business. You just have to say no. You just don't need their money, right? Even though they're interested, even though everybody's like, hey, I can write a check.
Sometimes they get annoyed.
Sometimes they get annoyed, right? I should say mostly it's the other way around. Every single damn pounder that you would go, my account is like, 1/1,000,000th of your personal brand. And I would get like, hey, can you invest in our business? Can you be an angel in our business? Can you be an advisor in our business? If I'm getting that many requests, you must be getting like millions of requests. So you get to this particular point in how many years? And the reason why I'm asking that is because if we want any founders listening to the podcast to start building their personal brand, it's not going to happen like overnight. It's not going to happen in 2 weeks, not going to happen in 6 months. So
I think there are levels.
Okay.
If you focus on it, you certainly get a breakthrough in the first 12 months. You actually do get a breakthrough. So like, you're putting out podcasts, and if you post 3 times a week on LinkedIn for 12 months, you're going to have 5 to 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. And I'm talking about if you put some thought into it. If you put stuff out there consistently for 12 months, you're going to go from 1,000 people to 10,000 people. But then going from 10,000 to 100,000 people might take several years, where you have to be consistent for several years at a time. So you got to figure out what what level do you want to play at? Do you want to play at having a good extended circle? Where you've got, 5 to 10,000 people who know who you are, or do you want to go right up to 100,000 people who know who you are? In which case you probably have to write a book. You have to get featured on some bigger podcasts. You need to speak on stages, those types of things. You've got to put some videos out on YouTube. So you're then starting to play the game. So at the level that I'm at right now, like I probably spend 10 grand a month just on people who manage my social media profiles. So, it's 120,000, and I'm talking pounds. So it's $150,000 a year of just social media management. But mind you, it's an asset. Like it's people cutting up videos and sticking them on shorts, and it's people taking content from one place and putting it in another place, responding to messages, all of those sorts of things. But it's within the context of the opportunities that generates as well. So it's a good, it's a good use of funds. But there's just levels to the game.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. I want to talk to you specifically around venture capital, because I talked to you about that at the beginning. So I just want to talk about that. So my first question that I ask almost everybody who has raised money, who invest in money, buys companies, who should raise money, why they should raise money, and when they should raise money. So 3-part question, yeah.
Who should raise money? The person who should raise money is someone who can return capital to their investors at 10 to 1. And you feel very, very, very strongly that you are going to deliver them a return, like your life depends upon it. So when you think about raising money is not you're some little victim entrepreneur and you need some help and, it's not fair that people don't give me money, right? I hear people all the time, it's not fair. Oh, it's not fair. It's like, no, it's not fair. It's also not fair that professional tennis players get paid 20 million, and it's not fair that professional race car drivers get paid 20 million. Like life is not fair, right? The people who should raise money are people who feel a deep sense of obligation that they will work their guts out to make sure that their investors get 10 to 1 on their money. If you take $1 million, you owe 10, right? If you take 100,000, you owe $1 million. So you want to play that game. So you might sit there and go, I don't want to play that game. Don't raise money. Bootstrap. Do something else, right? Because the deal is if you're attracting early stage venture, if you're attracting seed funding or venture capital A, your investors, they want 10 to 1. They want to get 10 to 1 on their money. It's high risk, high return. They want to put $1 million in and get 10 million out. So the person who should raise money has a deep obligation. They feel a sense of obligation to their investors. I'm going to work my guts out to get you 10 to 1, right? Or this, and maybe you don't work your guts out, but I've figured out some way for us all to make a ton of money. Don't do it because you feel entitled to it. Don't do it because you feel like it would make your life easier. Don't do it because it would help you. Do it because you owe them 10 times, right? So I know that sounds pretty harsh, but what do you think on that? Do you agree with that? Has anyone else said that?
So here's my thought on that. No, anyone has not said anything about that. And the reason why is because the founders, again, feels like, oh, we have a cool idea, so everyone should invest in our business, which is totally wrong, I think, because ideas are dime a dozen. It's just like everybody has a cool idea, right? Every other founder that I would meet or is just out there feels like their idea is the next unicorn. And
Here's a good idea. Let's rob a bank. Right?
Okay.
Let's rob banks and we'll get away with it. Now, it's easy to say, let's rob a bank, but realistically, how are you going to get away with that, right? How are you going to get the money and not get caught? Here's another idea. Great idea. Really good idea. Let's tear down all the old buildings in London and put up brand new buildings.
Great idea.
It's $1 trillion idea, right? It is a £1 trillion idea. If we get rid of all the old buildings and put beautiful brand new buildings, $1 trillion we could make, right? Because London's got a lot of old buildings. So ideas are worth nothing. Like, who gives a shit? It's execution. The question is, how the hell are you going to do that?
Exactly. And on the venture side, it's different in this way, and I could be wrong. So I'm not saying that this is not a very well articulated thought, but I do think that people have kind of made investors this sort of a negative role in this whole entrepreneurial journey. Is just like, yeah, VCs are bad, but I still want to have their money. Or they won't, they're so stupid to ask for 10x return or 20x return or something like that, but I will still take their money, like that kind of a thing. Is this happening?
The question is why would a VC even exist? They can just put their money in Microsoft. They can put their money in the S&P 500. They can put their money into houses and get rent. Like, why would a venture capital even exist if it wasn't for high risk, high returns? So you have to be doing something that is going to scale so big and so fast, and it's going to be so freaking impressive, and it's going to take every inch of your soul to keep up with it. If you take that VC, that's what they're looking for, something that's going to be explosive in value creation, right? They want something that's going to become $1 billion business. So essentially, if you take their money and you don't believe it, you're a scam artist. You are the entrepreneur is the scam artist if they're taking venture capital. If you know that the venture capitalist wants 10 times their money and you deceive them into thinking that you're that type of person and that you secretly just want to have an easy life, well then fuck you. You're the scam artist that give entrepreneurs a bad name. So if you want to play at the top level, you play at the top level. If you want to play professional tennis, you play professional tennis, right? You don't play when you feel like it. You play rain, hail, and shine. Oh, you've got a blister on your foot? Shut up and play tennis. Oh, you got a sore knee today. We're going to inject it with some painkillers and you're going to go play tennis. Because professional tennis is professional tennis. If you get into venture capital, you're playing professional entrepreneurship. So don't mess those people around. Those people are dealing with people's pension funds. They're dealing with people's retirement savings. They're dealing with people's family money. All of that should be protected and it should be treated with reverence. So I'm a big believer that you don't go into that space unless you seriously think you can hit a home run and that you're willing to go all the way. So that's part one. The first part of the question, who should do it? Not many people should do it, right?
A lot less people should do it compared to what everybody's just doing it now.
Yeah, and also you don't have a right to it. There's no right to it, right? Because you're, just simply because you had a difficult upbringing or that you for whatever reason, you don't have any right to it. Their job is to make money for their investors. They owe you nothing, right? It's not fair. That's how the world works. Forget about fair. You're there to work for them. So anyway, that's number one. What was the second part? So that's who should do it. Not many people.
Yeah, who should do it, when they should do it, and I think it was that. Yeah, why they should do it. So I think why and who you already answered that.
Yeah. So when you should do it is when you've got something that's going to be very scalable. Right. So, mind you, venture capital A is way down the line. You've got pre-seed and seed money, angel investors, all of that sort of stuff. So let's talk about angel investors and pre-seed investors and all that sort of stuff. I'm a big believer that you should do if you're going to do something that could be sold for 20 million, you should probably raise a couple of few hundred thousand early from smart angels. And you should probably have 10 to 20 angels who each put in 10 to 20 grand so that nobody's overexposed. Nobody feels stressed. Nobody feels like this is a massive commitment. They're all just putting in 10 to 20 grand to give you that first couple of 100,000. And you're going to bootstrap as far as you possibly can. So I'll talk to you about my examples. So for example, when I did Score App, we built 10 bespoke projects for clients to see what we could learn, and we charged each client about 6,000 or 7,000. We covered the costs, nothing to us. We just covered the costs to just learn how to build these kind of projects, and we did it as like an IT services contract as opposed to a product, and we just basically built these things. So that was just that learning phase with 10 clients. And then we said, we've figured it out. We've come up with a platform for how to build these, and we know how to build the platform. So what we said is we're going to put in our certain amount of capital. We're going to put in a certain amount of effort and energy. but we want some angel investors. So we said, let's get 15 or 20 angel investors and we'll raise £300,000 as just that little bit of seed capital to start the project off. So we basically, I presented the pitch. I did 4 boardroom sessions. Each session had about 10 to 15 investors. So I presented to about 40 to 50 investors. And I asked the investors not for a commitment, but could they fill in an expression of interest form? And in the expression of interest, it asks them what they liked about the presentation, what they didn't like about the presentation, how much money they would be investing, whether they've got any suggestions or advice for us. So we got them all to fill in that. When we collected all of those, I noticed that there was close to £1 million worth of people wanting to invest. And we only needed a few 100,000. So I went and I said, look, what we're going to do is break it up into a couple of rounds. And we'll probably do 3 lots of 300,000 just as we're getting that kind of bootstrap. And the valuation is going to get higher and higher as we go. But first one, we're only going to take 300,000. So we selected these people based upon their ability to help the project grow. So one guy had a database of 50,000 people. Another person had social media following. Another person had a really great in with the large corporation. So we actually said, okay, these are people who can open doors for us and do all this. So it's not just about the money. On average, they put in about 10 to 15,000 pounds each, or about 15,000 pounds times 15 people type thing. And then we built enough of the project, got enough traction. We got up to about 30 or 40,000 revenue per month, MRR, monthly recurring revenue. And then we said, okay, let's get another 300,000 in to throw some fuel on the fire and do some further development. So we went back to our investors. Yep, the valuation is now double, but we're taking another 300,000, right? So then we went back and then we said the valuation is now increased again. We're taking another 300,000. So we raised 900,000 pounds, I think, in total. And we basically did it as we achieved something, we then raised some more money. We achieved and we raised and we achieved and we raised. So we got that valuation up as high as we possibly could by taking as little money as we possibly could so that we could retain as much equity as we possibly could. And the way that we structured it is that as it currently stands, if we were to sell the company for £25 million, all of our investors have had an amazing return, incredible return. So they're going to be super happy because that was the early stage investors. Now we stayed away from VC because we now don't need VC. We've got hundreds of thousands a month of recurring revenue. We make about 90,000 a month of profit after we pay for everything. So we're reinvesting the profit back into the growth of the business. But my personal preference is to stay away from VC. Why do I want to stay away from VC? Because I know what their job is. Their job is to screw me over to get as much money for their investors, right? Of course, but I'm not dirty at them for that. That's their job, right? Their job is to get as much money for their investors, their limited partners. They're not on the side of the entrepreneur. They're on the side of the limited partner, right? I don't want to take someone's pension money and be their workhorse or their slave. I don't want to be under the pressures that they're going to put me under. I want to do things my way. And also, when it succeeds, I want more money. I want more money than they get. So it's really simple. So I'm staying away from them for as long as I possibly can. And I would only take venture capital if I went in eyes wide open and I said, okay, these guys are going to screw me, but it's worth getting screwed because of how big we're going to go, how fast we're going to go. If they can write me a check for 10, 15 million, and we can then go bust into the marketplace and do incredible things, even though I'm going to get screwed, it's all going to work out pretty well, right? They're going to be able to open up to, and they're going to help exit me, right? So they're going to get their own money back by exiting. But I go in eyes wide open. I don't think that they're fairy godmothers. I don't think that they're little angels who, they're not angels. Angels are actually angels, by the way. Angels are angels. So the people who come in at angel investor rounds, they're normally ex-entrepreneurs who want to see you succeed. They're putting in little bits of money. They don't care so much. They're just happy to see. They're called angels for a reason. VCs are vulture capitalists for a reason. But I love them for that. They're fine. They're there for that. They're perfect for certain things.
Yeah, you totally agree. And I think that level of maturity is somewhat missing because I could be one of the person who believes that, so could be wrong on that. I think everybody with this new social media age, you can say that. Everybody believes that, by the time you get to 25, you need to be a millionaire. By the time you get to 30, you should be worth $10 million. 35 should be $100 million. And by the time you, 40, you should be retired with worth more than $1 billion, something like that. And I had somebody on the podcast, and he mentioned this thing that, the average age of a successful entrepreneur is 42.
No, that's the average age of when they start.
Oh my God. Okay. And he was like, if you take out Sam Altman, that jumps up to 54, something like that.
It's basically this. Yeah, you go talk to JP Morgan, go talk to any private bank or wealth manager who they manage money, and you ask them, who is a typical millionaire, right? So the statistics are that the average entrepreneur who makes millions, so let's call it, I think it's more than 5 million of exit. The average age is 42 when they start and 57 when they sell. So on average, it's 42 to begin, and 15 years later they sell the business at 57 for millions. There's only 2,500 billionaires on the planet out of 8 billion people. So the idea that you're going to be a billionaire is ridiculous. There's only 2,500 of them. There's only 530,000 people who have more than 30 million. So there's 500,000 people who are in the ultra high net worth camp, which is the 30 million plus. So the idea that you're even going to get to 30 million is ridiculous.
How many millionaires are there in the world?
There'd be millions of millionaires. There'd be a lot of millionaires, but most of them are old.
Okay.
2/3 of all wealth, 65% of all wealth is people over the age of 60, the top 10% of people over the age of 60. So 2/3 of all wealth are people who are 60 plus.
Yeah, no pressure.
There's a reason that young people make the news when they become rich, because it's newsworthy, right? In the same way that if a plane crashes, it makes the news because it doesn't happen very often. If someone who's young makes millions, they get in the news because, it doesn't happen very often. Now, it sometimes happens. It happened for me pretty young, but it's, there are, like, for every story like me, there's 6 million entrepreneurs in the UK. There's 30 million entrepreneurs or business owners in the US. It's very rare, and you should enjoy the journey, right? It's a fun journey. The best kind of money is when it happens a little bit slow. You don't want it to happen fast.
It happened very fast for you. So how did that change you?
I boom busted twice. I went millionaire back to zero twice.
Oh, wow.
Before I was 30. Yeah.
I did not know the busted story. So what was that?
Well, the global financial crisis, I lost 2 major clients, and I went from 4 million a year, really profitable business, back to zero. And, that was 2008, 2009. So I was still 28, 29 years old. So I basically built a $14 million business and then lost it. And then I built a £4 million business, and then back to zero. Back to near, basics. So I had 2 false starts before 30 of being a millionaire effectively, and then losing it all, multi-million pound business, losing it, multi-million pound. So I'd done that twice before I was 30. I never went bankrupt, but I kind of went back to square one twice. The thing I will say is this: having money creates all sorts of problems that you can't even believe happen. So, like, some of the things that happen is that pretty much anyone in your whole family or your extended friendship network, they think of you as now a bank that they can come to for money. You get all sorts of, you get all sorts of people wanting to scam you. Also, the personality of an entrepreneur is that we are very optimistic people who see the upside of everything. So we're terrible investors. We're actually really bad investors because we can make what's called the bull case for any opportunity. So if you come to me and say, Daniel, what do you think about Zoom software, right? The video platform. I'm going to go, I bet they're going to come up with some new products. I bet they're going to open up into new markets. I bet they're going to hire some amazing new people. So I'm super excited, right? Whereas if you talk to a good investor, they're going to say, well, historically, they haven't innovated since this, and they haven't done this, and they haven't achieved this. I believe that they're declining. they're going to be overtaken by Microsoft and overtaken by Google, and they're in a competitive market and they don't have a big enough moat. And like they're like in proper good investors are very negative people. They and entrepreneurs are not very. So one of the problems with being an entrepreneur post-exit is right before your exit, you are the world's best fund manager for one type of asset called your business. You know how everything about that business and you're really good at it. Then you get handed a bunch of money and you're the world's worst asset manager for all the other businesses out there. So you're going to go off and buy a house in a terrible thing and overpay for it. You're going to go and buy some stocks and shares, and you're going to stick it in there, and you're going to overpay in commissions and all sorts of stuff. And then some wealth manager is going to come out of nowhere and charge you a 6% onboarding fee, and like all this crazy, like as soon as you show up on the radar, all these super smart sounding things appear. So basically, and also it's not fun. It's not fun. I'll tell you what's fun. What's fun is being broke, trying to start something. That's fun.
That's not funny. Trust me. It's not fun.
It's the good old days. It's the good old days. When you sit around talking to people who are multi-millionaires and they've made it and they're sitting at Nikki Beach having sushi and champagne, what are they talking about?
Good old days.
The good old days when I was broke and we had to try and, we had to sell some bicycle and make $400 by selling a bicycle, and that's how we paid for food that month, right? Good old days.
Daniel, what we do is we have a decent big of an audience, and very fortunate to have everybody who just follow us and give us their attention. And before any guest comes over the podcast, I just send out this message like, hey, Daniel Priestley is coming today on the podcast. Give us all the questions that you have. So we get like all kinds of questions, but my idea is just to make sure that, if there's double down, let's make sure that we're not asking them again and again. So some of them you have already covered, in the podcast. The ones that are still left, I'm going to ask you those. So, please share your thoughts on that. So for the first one, of the books that you have written, which would you say has the biggest impact and why you think so?
So many people come to me about key person of influence. It's one of those ones where they see themselves very differently. It changes them at a level of identity. It makes them feel that they are worthy of being a personal brand, that they're worthy of having a message and a voice. So a lot of people come to me and say that book has changed their life.
Okay, awesome. The second one, do you think starting a business is just a luck? You have successfully built so many businesses. Does that mean you're the luckiest person alive?
Yeah, I think luck is a huge part of it. But there is some luck is out of your control and some luck is inside your control. So let's be perfectly honest. I got so lucky to be born in Australia in the 1980s. Because when I was in Dubai, I was in the back seat of a car and I was talking to the driver. He's the exact same age as me. And he lives in Dubai. He works 16 hours a day driving for Uber to send money back to his family in Pakistan. And he's got kids and he's got a wife and he sees them once a year. And I just felt so sad because I've got 3 little kids and I thought, like, fucking hell. Just because I was born in Australia, I already started, up here. I went to a safe school, had police, hospitals. If anything happened, it was all safe. It was all fine. There was all this money in the economy. And I just was born in the right country. So that gave me 10 steps ahead of this guy. This guy's probably smarter than I am. He's probably harder working than I am, but I was just born in Australia, right? So it sucks, but that's just how it is. So luck is a huge part of success. There's also luck that you can control. So for example, sitting at home watching Netflix is it's probably not lucky, but going out and meeting people at a networking function is probably lucky. Right? I don't know what's going to happen, but it's more lucky than Netflix. If I post on LinkedIn 3 times a week, I don't know what's going to happen, but I bet you it's going to be something lucky will happen at the end of 12 months. If I, decide that my hobby is computer games and I just spend 4 hours a day playing World of Warcraft, there's nothing lucky is going to happen for me. So, if I see someone and I go and introduce myself, even though that seems weird, and I just go and introduce, hey, I'm Daniel. That's lucky. If I sit quietly and just look at my phone, that's unlucky. So there are certain things that open you up for lucky moments. And then there's luck that's out of your control, like where you were born and what time you were born and all that sort of stuff. But luck is a huge part of success, massive part of success.
Okay. Where do you see the biggest innovations happening across your portfolio industries? Portfolio companies, I think you should have written. Yeah.
I'm really excited by AI-enabled SaaS. So any SaaS business that plugs into AI, and anything that can figure out a really smart use of AI with a subscription model where you combine, here's what you want to combine. You want to combine knowledge about the user with domain knowledge experience, intellectual property, with artificial intelligence, LLMs. And when you combine information you can get about them, what you know about what you know, and an LLM, you can actually produce phenomenal value using artificial intelligence. If you can put all of that into a SaaS model, I think the next big 3 years is going to be AI-enabled SaaS businesses.
What do you think about, so this is not a question anybody asked, but I just want to know, what do you think about AI businesses in general, especially the ones that comes out, in this year? So yeah, Anthropic is big, Claude is pretty big, ChatGPT, OpenAI is pretty big. But other than that, it's just like everything is just a wrapper. It's just a GPT.
Yeah,
right?
but that's fine. Don't think of it as a wrapper. Don't think of it as a wrapper. Think of it as a toaster, right? When someone comes up with electricity and they build an electricity plant and it costs billions of dollars to invent electricity and have electricity production, but then another little company says, oh, now that there's electricity, we can make toast with electricity. We're going to make a toaster. We can boil water with electricity, so we're going to make a kettle. Oh, we can do a lamp with electricity, so we're going to make a lamp company. So it's not that they're creating a wrapper for electricity. They're creating a valuable use case for electricity. They're building something that is an application for an electricity. So what's happening at the moment, it's not some cheap little wrapper. If it's done correctly, it should be like a toaster or a lamp or a kettle. You're taking artificial intelligence like it's electricity, and you're turning it into an application that is really valuable. But what you're doing is you're mixing your own intellectual property. You're mixing what you can discover about the customer, right? And that's totally fine. Trust me, there is going to be businesses that make 20 million a year profit, and they're just going to be repackaged AI.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I can see that happening. Yeah, totally agree to that.
That's fine. That's a business. And here's the thing. If it's so easy, go do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're sitting there, oh, it's just a wrapper. Okay, go build the wrapper if it's so easy.
Yeah, and then sell it.
Yeah, build it and sell it. Oh, well, it's just so easy. God, that's what you want. You want something that's just so easy. Go and do it just so easy. Well, it's so easy to just turn electricity into some device. Okay, great. Build a device.
Awesome. So the next one is, so you're pretty active on Twitter. You're pretty active on LinkedIn. So do you get like negative sort of comments and feedbacks from people, like trolls or something like that?
Occasionally. I don't think a lot of that happens when you have less than 100,000 followers. So on most of my platforms, I have around 50 to 100,000, something around 50,000 on most of my platforms. And it's mostly just people who want to share the journey with me. They've read my books. They've listened to me on podcasts. They're not negative people. When you go over 100,000, for whatever reason, that's where you start to get people who should never have been in your circle in the first place. Look, I get the occasional negative thing, but most of my negative things happen when I go on a big podcast and 1 million people watch it in one hit, and a few people don't like what I have to say. But everything that I do that's like industry specific, and there's also a difference between someone being negative or just disagreeing. I got no problem. I mean, there's going to be people who listen to this and they go, I totally disagree with that one thing he said. Or 10 things that he said, and they might want to discuss it. Fine. That's not personal. That's just difference of opinion. I'm a big boy. We can have difference of opinion.
Okay. That's a good one. Where do you see, sorry, I already asked that. What is your favorite business or non-business book the one that you would recommend to all entrepreneurs apart from your own? You got like a lot of your own.
I know. I'm going to be cheeky and I'm going to answer this question in a way that you don't expect. The book that changes your life the most is not one you read, it's one you write. I'm a big believer that entrepreneurs should write a book. I wrote a book called Scorecard Marketing, and it's about how to set up an online scorecard, how to use Score App, right? And it's a small book. It's 20,000 words. It's not a big book, but it explains Score App, and it explains the psychology of why people buy and how to use assessments and quizzes and how to set them up. So I created that book. We then gave away 10,000 copies, and those 10,000 copies resulted in about 50,000 a month worth of recurring revenue. And the other thing is that every single person who joins the company gets a copy of that book, and it immediately helps them to understand what the business is about. All of the investors got a copy of the book, and they immediately understand that we know what we're talking about. And in the process of writing the book, I had to get clear about what this business is actually about. So I really do believe that if you're a founder, one thing that you should be considering doing is writing a book that is essentially the thesis of why your business should exist and how people should understand it, etc. And you write that book with the intention of giving copies away to as many people as possible. When you do that, life-changing things tend to happen. You get booked as a speaker, you get booked on podcasts, people respect you as an author. It's an amazing tool for building culture. So I really think it doesn't have to be a big book. It could be 20,000 words, but create the book that is go through the process of writing a book. If you've got time to read books, I reckon you've got time to sit down and write.
How do you come across with all these amazing insights, and how do you jot them together? And how, like for example, like a lot of the things that you mentioned, there's probably going to be at least 10 people who have all those insights and ideas. But how did you put together? And then what's the process looks like when you write a book?
Normally, I start by writing blogs, and when I'm writing blogs, sometimes I get a particular idea that I just keep circling around and I keep thinking. So in 2008, I was writing about Obama and how he was building a personal brand on social media. And I was writing about how every single person can build a brand. And we used to have to be on television or radio. You had to get permission to be a famous person. Now anyone can do it. Anyone can be on YouTube. So I was just kind of exploring all those ideas. And I was just blogging. And enough people started. I think I wrote a blog called Everyone Can Be a Key Person of Influence, or the 5 strategies to become a key person of influence. And I wrote that blog on a platform, and a lot of people started discussing it. And I went, you know what? I think even someone might have said, you should write a book about that, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'll have a go at it. So I always write in a few parts. I do an introduction to sell the reader on what the book is going to talk about. I then do disruption, like what is the old world and how is it now different? So I always do a disruption. Then I do the insights. What are the big picture insights that you need to know? Then I do the step-by-step method. How do you apply this? And then I do handling objections. What do you need to know in order to get over the obstacles? And then I do inspirational big finish. Like, let's leave the reader feeling positive. So I just go through this structure. Each thing is about 1,500 words times about 20, 30 things. And then I just go, it takes me about a year and I just chip away at it. Sometimes I have a big 2 weeks where I just go all in, and within 2 weeks, I do 3 or 4 hours a day for 2 weeks in a row, and I kind of get through it.
Wow. Is there any book that you're currently working on that's going to come out next year, maybe?
Yeah, I got signed for a book called The Lifestyle Business Playbook. So my publisher wants me to write, how do you build a lifestyle business? And we called it The Lifestyle Business Playbook.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, definitely that one as well. Do you think there are certain strategies that can make a startup more successful than others when getting started?
Totally. Entrepreneurship is just a step-by-step process. Anyone who follows that process is going to massively outperform anyone who doesn't. So in Silicon Valley, they talk about MVP, right? Ideation, MVP, product market fit, go to market. So there's like 6 or 7 steps that they're talking about. I talk about the first 4 steps is concept, audience, offer, sales. Right? What's your concept? How do you build an audience? What is the offer? How do we sell it? Right? So when you have a process and you follow a process, then it's very easy to figure out what is broken at each step, right? So it's like, if I have a terrible concept, I can't build an audience, go back to concept. If I have a good concept, I can build an audience. Now I've got an offer. The offer's not working. Is the audience correct? Or is it the offer? Okay, I'll fix the offer. Now I'm going to go and build a sales pipeline. Okay, what's going on there? So I can just break it down. In the early days of aviation, they had no idea whether it was possible to fly, but then some planes took off and they could see that it was possible to fly, but they didn't understand the principles of why something flies or what it does, why it flies. They had to figure all those principles out. And now, today, fast forward 100 years, we know exactly why every single plane takes off, and we know down to the screw and the rivet if this is a safe plane or not, right? So we can pick exactly whether this plane is safe or not, and we can figure out, oh, it's not safe because of that rivet right there, or that particular thing. And it's the same. In the early days of entrepreneurship, we didn't know why things took off or why they didn't take off. But where we are today, we absolutely can pinpoint, oh, that's a concept problem, that's an audience problem, that's an offer problem, that's a sales pipeline problem, that is a pitching problem, that's a published content problem, that's a product ecosystem problem, that is a joint ventures and strategic partnership problem. So we can just go boom, 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 boom. There's only so many parts now. We know the parts. We know what best practices look like. We've basically figured out 97% of the whole entrepreneurial process. And the 3% is that little 3% that makes all the difference, which is the creative spark, right? And your team and the execution. And then your team has to get out there and build it. But, you should not be guessing. You should not be, you've got to make sure that if you're an entrepreneur today, you have to treat it like a discipline like aviation, where you follow the best practices. And if you don't know what those best practices are, that's your first problem, right? We are so far past trial and error with entrepreneurship. We're way past that. This is not like, if you think about aviation in the 1950s, it was a lot further than aviation in the 1920s. So we're now in the 1950s entrepreneurship, not the 1920s entrepreneurship. We know why things take off and why they succeed and fail.
Why things take off and why they fail.
But why they fail, yeah.
Awesome. So the second last one that we have on the list is how you start a new business in 2024. And that person gives us like 3 points. So SaaS agencies and D2C. So, but I think pretty much the same thing, regardless of the
product. How do you start?
Yeah, how do you start a new business in 2024?
You start with testing the demand side before you test the supply side. So testing the demand side is that you launch a waiting list and say, I'm going to be launching an agency that does performance marketing for dentists. If you're a dentist and you would like to be one of our first clients, join the waiting list. And you basically see, can we get 10 times as many customers as we need to join the waiting list? And when people join the waiting list, you ask them 5 or 6 questions that basically say, what is it you hope to achieve? What problem are you trying to solve? How much do you want to pay? What time frame do you expect this to be solved in? What have you tried that didn't work? So you ask these questions when they join the waiting list, and then you end up with all the data. And if you can't get people to join a waiting list and give you their data, then forget the business idea. It's not going to fly. But if you want to know what is the first thing that I would do with any business idea, is just like launch a waiting list, a registration of interest list. Don't spend any time doing lines of code. Don't spend any time, on anything other than getting people to fill in an application to join the waiting list. Just simply test that.
Suppose, we pick any idea for this example, and then there's a waiting list. How do I reach, so in order to get like 100 people to sign up for that waiting list, and it's a, suppose B2B agency thing, I need to reach out to like 500 people or maybe 1,000 people, right? So how do I do that? Paid ads?
No. Social media. In 2020, I was already the CEO of a multi-million pound business, and I wanted to start Score App, but I didn't know whether it would take off or not. So I sent 3,000 messages with my own cut and paste thumbs to people on social media. So what did I do? I said, I'm going to run an introduction event. So I sent a message. I can pretty much remember the message. It was something like, in the 2010s, I launched an online scorecard We generated 90,000 leads and made $20 million worth of sales. I'm going to do an introduction event exactly how we did this. If you're interested in learning about how to use quizzes, assessments, and surveys to generate leads and sales, come along to my free event that I'm running on Zoom. I cut and paste that message to 3,000 people on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Cool.
Yeah, like it's not hard. You grew up in Pakistan, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you know what hard work looks like. You know that there are people out there who dig roads. You know there are people out there who lift water, canisters of water, and move it from point A to point B. People who stack bricks on their head, right? I never want to hear an entrepreneur say, oh, I don't want to direct message 1,000 people on social media. What if I get embarrassed? It's like, I want to punch those people in the fucking face. It's like, entrepreneurship's not that hard. Send 1,000 fucking messages. It'll take you a week, right?
Yep.
Get someone else to drive the car. You sit in the passenger seat, send the messages. Before you go to bed at night, send 100 messages. Get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and send 100 messages. When you're sitting on the toilet, send 100 messages, right? Just cut, paste, send, cut, paste, send, cut, paste, send, right? And maybe it's 3,000 messages and maybe it takes 3 weeks. But honestly, if this sounds hard, just go get a job. Like, honestly, if you want to switch off at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock at night, there's nothing wrong. But by the way, let me backpedal. There's nothing wrong with being a lazy, procrastinating person, right? But that's what a job is for. That's why you get a job, right? Go work for a government job. They don't care if you work or not, right? Go and get a job, and when it turns 5 o'clock, go home. And if the boss asks you for something on the weekend, report them to HR.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? But if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's 24/7, right? That thing's not going to get off the ground unless it's 24/7. Like, you're going to wake up thinking about it. You're going to fall asleep thinking about it. You're never going to switch off for the first 3 years. You are never, ever, even when you're on holiday, you're thinking about that business. It's like having a baby.
It's like having 3 babies at the same time, like triplets. That's the level of chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's great. That's the adventure. So, yeah, like, suck it up, put your big boy pants on, right? And if you catch yourself complaining, look in the mirror and slap yourself. Go to Pakistan and see how people work when they really do hard work, right? Life is easy. If you've even got the luxury of thinking about having a tech business, you're already in the top 1% of the world who have ever lived. So shut up and enjoy the opportunity.
Exactly. Who's your favorite in the Ashes? Because you're Australian living in the UK.
Can I be honest?
Absolutely.
I could not give a shit about young men running around a field, kicking a ball, throwing a ball, hitting a ball. If you've got time for that, then congratulations. I haven't got time for that. I care about my own career, and I could not care less about other men and what they're doing. If they want to run around chasing a ball, they can run around chasing a ball. I have absolutely no time for worrying about what other men are doing with their balls.
Okay. The ending. Okay. All right. So, all right, Daniel, we do have this one small ritual on the podcast. And what we do is we ask all our guests a question for our next guest without telling them who the next guest is going to be. Adapted from the amazing Stephen Bartlett. So, so the question that the last guest left for you is, what's the most influential non-business thing that has helped you in your business? Could be a hobby, could be a person, anything.
It's having kids.
Isn't that get hard, once you have kids? Because I have a son. I'm not going to lie about that. It's different, but yeah.
It means that you start thinking long-term. As soon as you have kids, you think 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years into the future. As soon as you have kids, you start thinking about, how am I going to provide for my kids? How am I going to help my kids when they're older? So you think longer term. You also have no time for nonsense once you've got kids, right? So you're not sitting there worried about trivial stuff. You think about the big stuff. Kids are also a great excuse, right? For the first 10 years, you can say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'd love to come along to that, but actually I've got little kids and it's my turn to do the school run today. I've got to pick up my kids from such and such. So anything you don't want to do, you just blame the kids. And So it's a great way to do that. Having kids matures you, right? It just means that you have to grow up in your head a lot. And it also makes you relate to a lot of other people that you previously didn't relate to. It gives you a level of empathy for people. You know, it opens up a part of your soul that you didn't have before. So all of those reasons, you know, kids are really great, and it just gives you an investment into the future as well, beyond your own lifetime. You want to do stuff that, you know, you immediately want to do stuff that's going to outlive you, because you've got these little parts of you that will outlive you. And also it gives you way more burden of responsibility. You just have to be more successful. It's funny, most men are fundamentally really lazy. I know that for me personally, when I was single with no overheads, I only paid myself whatever I needed to just enjoy life. And I just didn't push myself anywhere near as hard as when I had kids. As soon as I had kids, it's like, boom, I push myself way harder now. And I just figure stuff out, and I'm just much more disciplined. So I think kids are a great thing. I think everyone should be having like 3, 4, 5, 6 kids.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I appreciate the time, sir. It's been lovely talking to you. And thank you for teaching us all about business. I appreciate it.
Oh, that was so much fun. Cheers.
This is it from today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching and listening. All the resources and links that we have talked about, they're all in the description or in the show notes, depending upon which platform you're on. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a review. Would appreciate it. If you're watching it on YouTube, please mention down in the comment, did you like it? Did you not like it? What do you want us to improve? Who do you want us to invite on the channel? If you enjoyed this episode, there are chances you're going to enjoy that episode as well. So we're going to link it down somewhere here. Do hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that already. And thank you so much for watching again. And I'll talk to you soon. See you in the next one. Peace.